Hi, I'm Steve Bjork, and today I'm going to show you how to get started with LambdaSharp. So there are a few things that I'd like to cover, and that is the commands that you will need to get up and running, and as well as give you also an idea of what to expect inside the AWS console when you run. So before we get started, though, a quick recap, what is LambdaSharp about? It's a tool created for building serverless .NET applications on AWS. So it's specifically intended to bring these two technologies together and just really streamline the development workflow. Now, there's a couple of pieces to it. There is a command line that helps you build and publish and deploy your applications. There's also an SDK used for your Lambda functions that help with somewhat predictable failure modes so you can scale your system better. There's also a model that's based on CloudFormation, but adds a few enhancements to it to make it more suitable for development. And there is a set of operating services that get deployed into your account that help with other LambdaSharp modules when they get deployed to provide this consistent behavior and observability of your code. So to get started, we need to install the LambdaSharp tool. It's a .NET tool, so all you need is .NET 2.0 or later. And then you can just install it by running this global LambdaSharp.tool. And this will install it from NuGet. Just download the package, make it available automatically in your path. It takes a couple of seconds, and here we go. So now it's installed. And so we can run a couple of commands like info, which shows us kind of information about the account and what's how things are set up. And you can see that basically none of the resources have been created yet, which is what we would expect. I did set up the AWS account, so it automatically knows where to point to. And so we're ready to go. So the first step we need to do is create the infrastructure in order for deploying modules afterwards. And that is done by calling the config command. It's very straightforward. It will ask for a profile name, and you can just go with all the defaults here unless you have specific needs that would require other values. It then asks us if we want to create an S3 bucket. Yes, if we want to give it a name, we'll just have it generated automatically, and also an SNS topic. So these assets then get created using a CloudFormation template. They get automatically uploaded with the configuration settings you provided it, and it just runs and takes care of it. The other thing it creates is also a simple systems manager parameter that has the version number, so we can easily check which version is deployed to determine if an upgrade is needed or not. So this takes a couple of seconds, and then it will be completed around usually a little bit less than a minute, but of course runtimes can vary. Okay, so we're all done. It took 56 seconds, which is reasonably fast. And the next thing we need to do now we have the basic assets as a bucket and a topic that are ready to be used. The next thing we need to do is put in place these operating services, which we call deployment tiers. And what that runs, I'll give you a little bit more insight, but you have to give it a name because you have more than one of them. So I'm going to create one called simply demo. So this starts now running. And it will, there's some additional parameters I will show in a moment, but the defaults are safe and you can just run with them. So as this gets started, okay, it's in progress. I'm going to go back to the presentation and just talk about what we're now in the process of doing. So when you created that initial config, it created a deployment bucket with a deployment topic. The deployment bucket is used for uploading all the assets that you publish when you create modules. So those would include the templates, the code, and as well as loose file packages if you have some. The topic is automatically used by CloudFormation to notify on all the operations that occur during the deployment process. So that was the step one. The next thing we're creating a deployment tier. In this case, it's called dev. We created one called demo. And so this is where your modules will deploy into. This provides the basic operating services that are required for LambdaSharp to operate as an environment. And as you can see, it's really intended to have multiple of them so that they provide you with the infrastructure needed for a nice development lifecycle. So as you deploy into your development tier, you can then promote it into a staging tier or a testing tier for validation, and when you're happy with it, you promote it into your production tier. All of these are sitting on top of the exact same profile, so that the assets that have been compiled and put into the bucket can be reused across its different deployment tiers. So let's take a quick look at what is inside of one of those tiers. So we're deploying the core module. This is really the basic operating service that you need in order to run LambdaSharp modules. There's a few resources in here. It creates a dead letter queue, which the LambdaSharp CLI will always automatically reference as you build new modules. So dead letter queue is used in case of failure to send messages into and preserve them for reprocessing in the future. This allows you to build systems that have the opportunity of eventually becoming consistent on the desired state, either by addressing network issues over time or by fixing code and then replaying these messages back. Another thing it deploys is a Lambda function called the registrar. Now this one is used automatically as a custom resource by your modules, and it registers the module's name, version, as well as all the Lambda functions in that module. And that is needed because we also create a shared Kinesis stream that is automatically subscribed to, that all the logs are automatically subscribed to publish into, so that we can analyze the error output and warnings output coming from all the Lambda functions. So these go into this Lambda function called the log analyzer, which will parse them and then emit errors onto an error SNS topic. You can subscribe to so you know when errors occur or warnings, as well as a usage one. And this one is really interesting because since we registered everything at the beginning, we have insight in terms of how long a Lambda function can execute, how much memory it can consume, and we compare that to what it actually has done. And if it gets too close to the limit, we'll issue a warning on the errors topic. Lastly, it also creates a default secret key, and this is simply for convenience. You should always protect your passwords and other sensitive information. So in order to make it a little bit easier, every deployment tier has a secret key that will be assumed to be the default one to use when encryption should occur. You can provide your own, but this gets you started and at least you have something. So let's go back. And yep, this is done. So this took about 2.5 minutes to be set up. So you can see here all the resources that I just was talking about got created. There's some output afterwards of all that shows you the resource identifiers, which is useful when you want to find them, but generally it's just for informational purposes. You can ignore it. Okay, so let's go into the AWS console and look what's going on. So we now have 2 CloudFormation stacks that were deployed. The first one is the LambdaSharp tool default. This is the profile that created these resources at the very beginning. So there's a deployment bucket that's still empty and a couple of notification topics. But we also deployed this LambdaSharp core module. And this is kind of where your basic operating services are that all other modules in this deployment tier will rely on. So there's quite a few different things in here. Now what I would like you to show you though is when you deploy LambdaSharp module, you saw that in this case I just said which tier wanted, it created it, it's demo dash, the beginning. But let's say, update, they moved the button. Okay, so LambdaSharp, the CLI, actually organizes your parameters. You may have defaults, but it organizes the parameters into a logical interface that CloudFormation can use. So what you see here is the LambdaSharp tier settings. And if we had wanted to set it up with a different kind of SQS queue, maybe we had one already for that letter queue, we could have provided it the on here, similarly for the stream. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want this thing to be set up. There are defaults that get used and resources will then be created, but you can also wire things up much more specifically to your needs. There's how big the buffer should be for Kinesis streams, if you want your KMS key to be automatically rotated, and so forth, and so on and so forth. Many of these dashboards down here you should modify. These are created to tie in everything nicely into your tier, but you can see how your parameters are organized into these sections, and that's all taken care of by the CLI tool. So that's what I wanted to show you. I actually don't need to make any modifications to this. So you're ready, set, up and running. You can now go on and create your first module. But you have everything in place that would be needed to get started. Here's a couple of resources, ways to stay in touch, be it on Twitter or on GitHub. I hope you found this useful, and happy hacking.